www.oldguytalks.com coming at you today. If you have not already opted in, what are you waiting for? There's more stuff like I'm going to have today with Ryan Smith of Tailor Made Compounding, folks. More of that at oldguytalks.com. But before we get to that point, I need to keep Sue, the IP lawyer, happy. Read my medical disclaimer. This is information only. Consult with an appropriate professional before starting any program. Do not be stupid. You are responsible for your own shit. The old guy is a capitalist and not a socialist weasel. He will be promoting stuff and may be compensated. You can rest assured the old guy only promotes stuff he uses. You will have different results. So Ryan, look at you, man. Dude, compared to most of the people on this program, you are a child. You are a child. I'm gonna be nice and not say how I refer to other young guys, but you look like you're about the senior in high school. At least maybe about that. But I know you're just a little bit older than that. You went to college in Transylvania University, and then you moved on from there. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this peptide space.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a super exciting place to be in, but my journey starts, sort of way back. I was intending to sort of be, a doctor. I went to Transylvania University, as you said, got a biochemistry degree, and did a ton of research with proteins and peptides generally. So I did a lot of physical chemistry research, doing X-ray crystallography, doing recombinant protein synthesis and purification, you name it. So that's my background as sort of a biochemist. But it was all sort of prepping for medical school. So I went to the University of Kentucky for medical school, went 2 years and decided it just wasn't for me. So after passing step one, after going through the whole process, decided to sort of branch out and see what else I can do. And probably within 6 months of that, we had Tailor Made Compounding started, which was, again, and is now a compounding pharmacy that sort of specializes in providing a lot of these special peptides and sort of hard to get and hard to source molecules for human use.
Okay, so let's start with the basics because a lot of people aren't scientists, and I'm gonna get you to back off on the vocabulary there. Unlike Jay, who you guys are just throwing around acronyms and so what is a peptide? How do you explain a peptide to a lay person and compare it to a protein? Maybe just kind of as a form of reference.
Yeah, definitely. So the difference between a peptide and a protein is really just size. Again, most of the protein you would consume in your diet are large amino acid molecules. So everything's sort of pieced together by these amino acids. And if you go over 50 in that chain, it's considered a protein. Anything less than that is considered a peptide. So okay. What we talk in terms of these peptides, they're generally just drugs, but they're drugs that have a special, I guess, in their category, they have special advantages, right? They're super, super specific. So if you take them, you can get exactly the desired result. They don't have a lot of drug interactions. So they don't take your typical, drug profile, right? It's not something you take once a day by mouth and, you might have some side effects with that. These things are a little bit more specific, a little bit harder to take. Definitely have some, positives and minuses, but the really big positive about it is just the types of things you can elicit naturally in the body in order to sort of mimic and sort of, I guess, stimulate and emulate your natural body's production.
So basically, it's not these peptides function to basically harness your body's healing powers, your body's capacity to basically heal itself in a way that a lot of times vanishes with age, that degenerates with age.
Absolutely. So yeah, again, all of these things are mimicking natural things that happen in your body. So we're just basically targeting receptors so that we can target the things that sort of go dysfunctional as you get older, right? Whether it be, immune dysfunction, and you start to get sick as you get older, or, you start losing muscle and get, sarcopenia, where you start having trouble putting on muscle, or, even cognitive things like, brain dysfunction or plaque buildup. We can sort of target all of those depending on the receptors that your cells naturally have. So we're just sort of taking advantage of that. And the peptides give us a way to do that.
Okay. So peptides have been around for a long time. You can buy them on the internet. You can buy lots of stuff on the internet. Amazon, you hit peptides, there'll be a lot of them there. So let's talk about peptides, and I believe you've used the term in the past, prescription use peptides. Let's break those down into two basic groups.
Definitely. So everything that we do at TaylorMade Compounding is patient-specific prescriptions, and again, a lot of that has been based off of an unfortunate black market, which has been established for doping. One of the really cool things about the peptide products is, in addition to being able to help people, they also can help maximize people's performance by hijacking those sort of same systems that we would if we're trying to elicit, healthy behaviors, but in athletes, right? So they've been used in athletes for a long, long time. And as a result, there's been this underground market sort of that's developed in order to provide these things to people. And a lot of the times they'll have not for human use and for research use only. Those are not technical designations. And most of the time you're sort of being repackaged, being brought in from out of the country, and not a lot of regulation on that. So all the peptides we do have to be given via script by physicians.
Okay. Now you mentioned not for human use. Now you're located in Kentucky, in horse country, and there's a story about how you ended up there. So can you tell us, everybody, how the peptide company end up not in Silicon Valley, not in Boston, back harbor, but how'd you end up in Kentucky?
Definitely. So yeah, as you know, race culture is one of the biggest draws to Kentucky, other than bourbon, right? So with that being said, we were doing some stem cell processing things here for horses, and both of the things tend to be reparative and performance enhancing. And so we got exposed to the industry in Australia, which again, the peptides in Australia have been more or less regulated by their government for over a decade. So there's a lot of research happening there, a lot of really good experience from a medical perspective that hasn't happened in the United States. So we sort of we have a sister pharmacy there called Como Compounding Pharmacy that sort of helped us get it started in the United States. And one of the driving factors of that was performance and benefits in horses.
Okay, all right. So you mentioned a little bit about regulation here. I want to get into that a little bit more. What is your relationship, or I don't know if that's the right word, but how do you interact with the FDA, Federal Drug Administration, TaylorMade Compounding?
Yeah, so we don't do a ton. Pharmacies are necessarily regulated by pharmacy boards. And so we're regulated by over 44 of them in each state, getting inspections all the time. We actually had one today. But with the FDA, they basically regulate a couple things. And one is the manufacturing of a lot of these products. So anytime that we source, it has to be from an FDA manufactured facility. So we make some in-house. And therefore, definitely are regulated by FDA if we ever wanted to supply for our compounding pharmacy. So that's essentially, I guess, the level of power. Pharmacy boards regulate the pharmacies, whereas the FDA regulates the creation of these products and how they're sold in the United States, even to pharmacies.
Okay, so manufacturing versus distribution, really, basically, exactly. What we're talking about. Okay, so you use some words here. What's HPLC and mass spectrometer, and how do you guys use those?
Yeah, definitely. So HPLC stands for high pressure liquid chromatography.
Did you say that 3 times?
Yeah. In a row? Yeah, exactly right. So the high pressure liquid chromatography is just a better way of saying it separates things, right? We force this mixture of a lot of different things. And whenever we get it out of, the column that we're pushing it through, we get it individually separated. So, if we put, 6 peptides in there at once, it would shoot every peptide out one by one. And what that allows us to do is to purify to make sure we're getting exactly what we want. But in addition to that, it also sort of lets us test it, right? So we can see whenever we measure it, I guess, whenever it comes out of that column that we force it in with UV light. So we can basically see how much is coming out at a certain time, and we can test that. And by testing that, we're able to see what we have. We're able to confirm its identity and then confirm its purity as well. So all those things are important because those are the things that are actually going to affect how it affects you clinically. If you were to dose it and you were to dose something at 50% purity, it's not going to have nearly the same effect as if you do it at 99 to 99.9, which is sort of our target.
Yeah. There was an article recently in the New York Times, and the old guy can't believe that he's actually quoting the New York Times about the amount of actually lack of purity or I guess fraudulent product out there. The number was huge.
For sure, yeah, it was 80%, and that was the person they quoted was I guess the lead official at WADA, the World Anti-Doping Association. And so 80% of the product out there, they say is fraudulent, which again, sort of helps us in our business because we are able to provide, again, really, really good quality products. So we make a difference, not in just how it affects you clinically, but in the safety and efficacy too. You don't want to be doing something that could end up hurting you, and we prevent that.
Yeah, 80% is not good odds if you're a consumer, is it?
Exactly. Yeah.
Not at all, not at all. And before I get one last question on something, you guys are really into a lot of quality control. So tell me and our viewers, how do you interact with your physicians, with your prescribing physicians?
Yeah, so prescribing physicians, we're a little bit different in that we sort of have to have an onboarding with all of our physicians before we do it, before we sort of supply them. And the reason is because a lot of what we're doing isn't taught in medical school, right? It's very, very new, and so we like to sort of start from ground zero. It's essentially telling them our entire process, but then also doing a little bit of education on a lot of these really, really new products because ultimately, the last thing we want is, for one of these things to be dosed incorrectly or to cause, an adverse side effect. So we do a lot of education, and we always sort of convey the message about safety and all the steps we take to our physicians so that they feel a little bit comfortable prescribing with us in a relatively, innovative area as well.
Okay, sounds wonderful. So let's get into the uses of peptides, and this is kind of all. In a lot of ways, I find this very mind-blowing because there's so many uses in so many different areas. Now, how many peptides are there right now that you have versus the ones that you are actively dispensing? What's the number there?
Yeah, so we're probably actively dispensing, I would say around somewhere in the mid 40s in terms of products, but right now there are over 7,000 in development, and we probably have done or have looked into doing over 100. And so, it's growing from a clinical basis year by year by year. I should also note that, again, I should have probably spoke about this when we referenced the FDA, but a lot of these are not FDA approved yet. So a lot of them are. There are around 50 US FDA approved peptides, but there's going to be more and more and more as the years go on. So it's one of the fastest growing areas of medicine. Which is definitely a promising thing, but at the same time, there's a lot of potential that is not technically FDA approved yet.
Okay, all right. So I'm gonna start going through some of these things. I want to talk about the healing peptides, some of the ones for, let's say, muscle and tendon tears, things like that. So why don't you give me some background on that?
Definitely. So we traditionally just do around 3 types of healing peptides. And one is really specialized for muscle, one is specialized for tendons and ligaments, and then we have another one for osteoarthritis. The 3 of those tend to be, applicable a lot of the time in a lot of different ways. And so the one that we do for muscle type injuries is called thymosin beta-4. It is a really, really interesting peptide. The thing with the repair peptides is that they do a lot of different things. So they work via a variety of different mechanisms. So in terms of, how complicated these products are, this is probably our most complicated category.
Oh, really? Okay. So do you ever combine like a muscle tendon one together, or is that something that happens?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the tendon one is called BPC, or Body Protection Complex 157. And that one we often combine with the thymosin beta-4, post-surgery, particularly if someone's doing any type of orthopedic surgery. To be honest, we do a lot now in plastic surgeries, a lot because we do mostly cash-based business, and a lot of those are elective aesthetic procedures. But the repair and recovery with those 2 products can be very, very significant in our athletes, even just in, people getting hip replacements or whatever it might be. Those 2 products can even cut, healing times in half and recuperation times in half for a variety of different surgeries. So that tends to be our biggest one, but we do it even for people who are not doing surgeries, just people who have tendon sprains or, ligament damage, or who are just sort of trying to, repair before they have to commit to surgery.
Yeah, I can tell you just from personal experience, I had a bicep tendon tear. It was the most frustrating thing because every time I thought it was healed, it got re-injured, and it could be re-injured by just reaching for something quickly or opening a door. It was freaky. It was just it was a very, very frustrating injury. Lasted for a long time until I had some PRP therapy on it. So let's talk about the neuropeptides. those are, I think, are very interesting in terms of what they can do for people. So traumatic brain injuries, Alzheimer's, opiate withdrawal. Just kind of let's just go and dive into these.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this is a huge class and one that's growing. I would say that, probably one of our most popular is actually a mixture of different peptides. It's called the cerebrolysine. And this one has been approved in Europe and Asia, not necessarily approved in the United States by the FDA yet, but probably making good strides. It's got a ton of data and is one of the best peptides for neurological repair. For anyone sort of looking into peptides that help neurologically, this is one I would absolutely start with.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And how they work and what do they do? What's their mode of action?
Yeah, so they all have, depending on which one we want to talk about, they all work in a little bit of different ways. And the cerebrolysine, in effect, is a bunch of combination of nerve growth factors. So, things like brain-derived neurotrophic factor and, ciliary nerve growth factor. All of these things essentially promote neuron connections and survival. So, particularly for, if you think about people with traumatic brain injury who have stopped, had ischemic blood flow issues, or vascular dementia who have had some of the same issues, or even just people with Alzheimer's or MS who have, I guess the nerve cells that are slowly dying. All of those scenarios can be benefited by nerve growth factors, which basically increase the survival of your nerve cells, which, once they're dead are sort of hard to recuperate. So the cerebrolysine is working by just, again, stimulating that growth to make sure that you're not deteriorating.
Okay, so you said not deteriorating, but my impression was that they're actually regenerative in their process.
They are. The cerebrolysine, as a matter of fact, has been shown to regrow myelin sheaths in those MS patients that I referenced a bit ago. Even beyond that, we've seen a lot of times there's definitely a window of recovery after something like a brain injury or a stroke. And we've seen that doesn't necessarily apply with the cerebrolysine. We've seen people 4 or 5 years out from a hemorrhagic stroke see benefit. Wow. Yeah, absolutely. And so again, that's definitely the idea. A lot of the studies that have been done with the cerebrolysine have been done within 6-month windows. So we don't have a lot of clinical data to back it up, but anecdotally, we can tell you we've absolutely seen results.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned you had a story about a young child. There was a child of a physician that had TBI. Yeah,
definitely. One of our physicians essentially had a child, they're probably around 18, with multiple contusions to the brain, and she credits the cerebrolysine with as one of the reasons that he was able to recover so quickly with no lasting damage after a pretty serious accident.
Mm-hmm. Okay, all right. Let's talk about some of the other things. Let's talk about weight loss and things like that. How do they function, and are they different in men and women in terms of weight loss and those type of things?
Yeah, so probably the most popular, type of peptides for weight loss are the ones you see, on your weekend, whenever you're watching TV, you see, things for Victoza and, all those types of, diabetic type drugs. But they're really good at establishing insulin sensitivity. So the Victozas and the GLP-1s, which stands for glucagon-like protein or glucagon-like peptide 1, those things are going to, and I don't want to get too technical, but essentially,
you almost got off the reservation, but you saved yourself if you got close to the border.
Exactly, right? But
you knew you were going there.
but again, there's probably some name recognition there for anyone who watches this, right? They definitely see the Victoza on TV. That's actually a peptide product, and that peptide helps you process sugar and insulin better, so it actually helps you lose weight. But the ones that are, the flashiest in our world are going to be the growth hormone type products, right? Things that increase your natural growth hormone, because, a lot of people take growth hormone for the effects that it has on the cardiovascular system, on metabolism, and things like that. So the tesamorelin and the CJC 1295, those are both products which increase the levels of growth hormone your body naturally secretes, and as an effect, has definitely a body composition effect, which encourages you to lose muscle or lose fat and gain muscle.
So those actually cause your body to naturally produce versus synthetic growth hormone that you basically would inject. This actually causes your body to increase human growth hormone production naturally.
Correct. And one of the ways to think about it is that, as you get older, your body is still producing growth hormone. The issue is it's not releasing it. And so it's being all stored in your pituitary, but your body is essentially sending it signals and it's not responding. And that happens, you know, the moment you hit 26, there's a pretty sharp decline in your growth hormone levels. And so, I mean, it's crazy. It goes down very, very quickly.
Yeah, that was 40 years ago for me. So it's been downhill, and I look it too.
Well, yeah, no, it's crazy. It's crazy how young that happens. Most people think, you know, that, you know, you have to be, you know, in your 50s before you see a decline in your natural growth hormone or IGF-1, but it's not the case. It happens really, really quickly. And so these things basically just tell your pituitary to secrete I guess the amount of growth hormone that you're already producing. And as a result, you see results in a lot of areas. You have better deep wave sleep. You have increased repair and recovery. So, you know, you're not sore, you know, the moment after you go work out or whatever it might be. There are a lot of different areas which the growth hormone affects, but one of the biggest is body composition.
Okay. And you also mentioned kind of, maybe just go a little bit more into sleep. So if people having a hard time sleeping or don't get enough sleep, how does that help?
Yeah, so the growth hormone itself will increase deep wave sleep and help you get a deeper sleep. And so the CJC is probably our most popular for that, CJC 1295. Beyond that, we have a couple other products like the Delta Sleep Inducing Peptide, also called DSIP. And those things, again, do the same thing. They help with the deep wave sleep, the type 4 sleep, which, you know, is responsible for, you know, all of your restorative sleep, your dream state sleep. All of that stuff is sort of encouraged by this. Unfortunately, there's not really a peptide that we use in clinical practice that helps you fall asleep, which is, you know, definitely a big deal. A lot of people want help in that aspect, but while we can't help with that, there are a lot to help you sort of, you know, sleep better once you are asleep.
Oh, okay. All right. And some of the other uses, hair loss.
Yeah, definitely. So there are a lot of peptides that help with hair loss. Probably the two most popular tend to be, well, at least one is called zinc thymulin. It's a peptide your body naturally produces, but over the course of time, if you apply it to the scalp, you see hair follicles increase. And there's some really cool, if anyone's interested in hair loss, I recommend them to look up zinc thymulin. And they can look at some before and afters. Unlike a lot of these things, the before and after pictures with these hair loss pictures are pretty compelling because you get to see results right off the top of your head in 6 months.
How do you spell that? T-H-Y?
Yeah, THYMULIN. And it's sort of abbreviated ZN-thymulin. And there's some really good before and afters. And so that one is, in addition, unlike most peptides, it's something you can apply topically, which most of these traditionally have to be injected. And so that's a different, you know, sort of mechanism of action, or I should say route of administration. And then another thing that you can also do is, which I think we referenced a little bit before, is in addition to PRP, we have a lot of people who do the thymosin beta-4. And that combination, if you're microneedling the PRP into the scalp, you can see some really, really good growth of hair follicles. Again, we've had success in, you know, alopecia patients. We've had success in, you know, women who have been on androgens. We've had success in men who just have, you know, normal male pattern baldness.
What about treating OBGs?
Yeah. So, yeah.
You know what that is?
What's that?
You know what that is?
I think, but you can clarify for me.
No, you can go ahead and say it. It's okay.
No, you go ahead.
Old bald guys.
There you go. Yeah. You know, like I said, but it helps them regardless. It helps with a variety of patients. Like I said, at zinc thymulin, you can really see a difference because they've got some close-up pictures. In terms of our male patients, with, you know, PRP and the thymosin beta-4, I would say it takes a little bit more time. You know, unfortunately, you're sort of fighting genetic, you know, predisposition, which is always a lot more difficult. But even then, we do see some good results.
Sure. You can use that term. You can say and very good on OBGs. What's OBGs? Use that in your next lecture. Cognitive function.
Yeah. So again, cognitive function, we have plenty. It goes sort of those neuropeptides. The more so we have for cognitive function are going to be, you know, I guess products like the C-Lank and the C-Max, which again, a different route of administration can be applied nasally, which is again pretty rare for these peptides. but they can work on increasing, brain processing speeds and memory retention. So those are some of the ones that come to mind at the forefront. But again, the same things that we talked about, neuroregenerative capabilities, can also help with general brain processing speeds.
Okay. And then let's talk about some of the sexual dysfunction, vaginal dryness.
Yeah.
And that usually is accompanied with urinary incontinence.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, especially for, so generally for women, it can happen, as you get older as a result of a lack of estrogen, right? So most of these things, estrogen and hormone therapy tends to be the first step in most patients. However, with that being said, one of the products that was developed for women, and it's actually on its way to be FDA approved for women, it's called bremelanotide PT141. And it was, again,
okay, you're gonna have to spell that for me again.
Yeah, so it's BREMELANOTIDE. Yeah, I think I did that one right. Bremelanotide, and then PT141 is also what it's called as well. It was developed by Palatin Technologies, hence the PT, and it actually just got in May. It got new drug application approval by the FDA. So this is one that you're going to see on, like I said, Good Morning America, your nightly news shows. It's going to be one that's very, very popular. But it's going to come out first and foremost with the FDA if it gets approved for female sexual dysfunction. So it's going to be applied just for women. And some of the results actually are done in Arizona as well, at the University of Arizona. A lot of studies have been done, and they measured, something called vaginal amplitude testing, which measured a lot of the things that we talk about when we talk about female sexual arousal, right? Like lubrication, blood flow, muscle constriction. All of those things were sort of markedly improved for the women who took it and were exposed to pornographic material. So that study is definitely an interesting one to read. But it's also fascinating because it gives a new tool for doctors to treat women, which is much needed.
Yes, here you in charge of getting the research data here, stuff. So, and then let's talk about just briefly, because we're going to do a little bit of a session in the Old Guy Talks Cave about ED for men.
Sure. Yeah, and again, it's based on that same drug, and this drug is working directly on the brain. Most of the drugs that work on men are working, via the vascular blood flow system, right? You think about your, Viagra, Cialis,
Sure.
all those making your blood vessels more likely to respond. This is happening on the brain. So as a result, we get a lot of really cool and innovative type of effects in men that you wouldn't necessarily get with Cialis.
Okay, my mind just went off.
Yeah, it's an interesting.
And most every guy's mind just went like, okay, innovative and cool effects. Okay,
definitely.
Okay, we're going to get into that in the Old Guy Cave, because we're going to talk about that in greater detail. This is in the adult only version here. Yeah, greater and cool effect. So, all right. So Ryan, I'm sitting out here in Phoenix, Arizona, soon to be Las Vegas. And this sounds really good to me. Okay, this sounds really good to me. How do I, as a patient, go about finding a doctor that knows what the hell they're doing with this stuff?
Definitely, and it can be a little bit difficult. Really, the places to look are the integrative medicine space. So, people who handle generally, a lot of these things are not covered by insurance, which is unfortunate. I mean, they will eventually, but at the moment, due to the lack of FDA support, a lot of them aren't. So you sort of have to look for practitioners who operate almost on a cash-based business, and that can be difficult to find. The resources that I would suggest are to look up, doctors in your area who do hormone replacement type therapies. And then if you have a good relationship with someone who does hormone replacement or concierge medicine or just generally integrated medicine, it's definitely a discussion to be had with them. Hey, I'm interested in these products. Can I get more information? And we always sort of like to take up the mantle at that point, and always love to talk with new physicians and sort of educate as much as we can. The other resource would be the International Peptide Society is offering, I guess, a facility on their a tool on their website to basically help match up doctors to patients for people who are interested in their area. So if are from a particular area, that might be a website I would recommend checking out as well.
Okay. Does your company provide matching of people geographically or not?
We do. We can. Again, we're not nearly as quick and automated. So we traditionally like to reach out to our physician and pair them up with a phone call or something like that. So we take a more hands-on approach, which usually takes a little bit more time as well. But generally, we have practitioners all over the United States and are able to pair anybody who asks on our website.
Sure. And do you ever work directly with patients or not, or is it always through a physician?
Always, we have to have a physician script. So if we're happy to fill a patient script if they bring it to us, but ultimately we like to sort of have that relationship with the physician, just because these things are new, sure. And so we like to make sure that it's dosed correctly, that they're providing a little bit of advice to all the questions which come about with some of these new products.
All right. So Ryan, is there anything that we haven't covered that you think we need to cover?
Yeah, I mean, the world of peptides is constantly growing. So I'm sure that right now, I think that we've covered a lot. And then if we maybe we'll have another one, a couple months from now to go over the rest.
All right. Sounds good. So, folks, Ryan and I are going into the old man cave and for a more detailed version of talking about ED. But in the meantime, this is Orris, the old guy from www.oldguytalks.com signing off. And remember, it's all about creating a kick-ass life for yourself and those that you love. Opt in. Don't wait. Don't hesitate. Don't procrastinate. Do it now.